We've got a log here, and the question is about vibration on high throttle. So this should be an interesting one, and let's get right into it. Here's the video, and I see that we've got a lot of high throttle punches. So let's watch the video first, and get this off the screen real quick. Let's watch the video first and just see what we can see. There we go, arming and go. A little bounce back there, it looked like, maybe. Yeah, there's that bow. Yeah, that's awful. Let's see what else we can find. Okay, so I looked at the rest of your video, and that's the best example of it there. So we're going to stick with that one. And I don't need to look at your gyros to tell that something crazy is going on. Um, this is very interesting because let me just give you my thoughts just from looking at your video, and hopefully that'll be informative into sort of how I think about these things. It doesn't look like p-term oscillation because p-term oscillation is very regular, and this is irregular. It kind of goes ying 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 ying, whereas p-term oscillation would be like ying 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 ying. Okay, if that was very helpful. So it could be D-term oscillation. D-term amplifies noise. Noise is irregular, and therefore D-term oscillation can be regular. D-term oscillation or D-term noise amplification is usually present at many throttle positions, but if you were right on the edge of being too high, you could get a scenario where on high throttle, your oscillation would come out. So, oh, sorry, bump that. Let's go ahead and take a look. Let's take a look first at your config dump. You are on Betaflight 216, which is the latest stable Betaflight. It also happens to be the one I'm currently flying. You are using LuxFloat 1.1, 1.0. Yeah, I agree. Your eye gains are higher than I would normally expect. I'm glad you pointed that out. And your D is not extreme, although Betaflight 216, my experience is that the D gains need to be a little lower than they would otherwise. I think I'm down in the low 20s or high teens, whereas I normally would be in the mid to high 20s and low 30s maybe. But I'm not flying LuxFloat, so take that with a grain of salt. I wonder, your D-term cut hertz is at 40, your gyrosoft LPF is on, and your gyro LPF is at 188. So you're about as filtered as you would normally be on Betaflight. You haven't deactivated any of the filtering, so that's good to know. That does take away one of my potential suggestions, which was that possibly you've got noise and need some more filtering, but that's probably not the case. Okay, well, let's take a look at your traces and see what we got. And I believe this was, where was it? Oh, hold on. You know, I hit the space bar because I want to play back the video, but it doesn't work that way. Okay, so we're just going to watch and look for what flips out here. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. Let's look at pitch. Let's look at pitch. Yeah. Let's look at yaw just for completeness. Oh. Oh. Okay. Well, this is certainly where something's going on. Yeah, you're okay. So on pitch and roll, your P terms did not look super active even when the copter was flipping out. An overactive P term is really obvious. and I've pointed out in other traces what it looks like. If you see it enough times, it will become really obvious. It is regular in its frequency, and its magnitude behaves a certain way. Um, it feels like what we're seeing here is an overactive P term. On the yaw axis, it often doesn't have that same oscillating regularity because the yaw axis lacks enough authority to get a good oscillation going. But this certainly. So what I was going to say is that possibly you had excess D gain on your pitch and roll. And the reason I say that is, I was going to say that, don't go there yet. I was going to say that because we're clearly seeing some kind of like crazy, this is D term kick because you don't have RC smoothing on. Hang on, let's confirm that. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that as long as you're using serial. Uh, Oh, so you're using ppm. So if you're using ppm, my recommendation would be to have RC smoothing turned off. That's right. Okay, you're fine. You're fine. Sorry, thinking as I go. Yeah, where I was going to go here is that we see a lot of oscillation in the gyro, right? And we don't see hyperactivity in the P term here. The P term is relatively well constrained. And at that point, if you have to pick something that's causing oscillation, well, it's not the I term. The I term doesn't cause high frequency or mid frequency oscillation. It seldom these days causes low frequency oscillation. So that just leaves the D term. So between these two, I would say lower your D term. But then we get to the yaw axis, and we see that the yaw axis, the P term is going freaking nuts. And the D term looks relatively small in magnitude. So sometimes if you have an overactive D term, it can cause vibrations or oscillations that then cause the P term to flip out, right? So you can have a sort of a tail wagging dog scenario. But that's not what's going on here. The P term is flipping out, and the D term is relatively mild and well controlled. So my first guess would be that you should reduce your P term on yaw. And let's just check again what your values are. Yeah, okay, so I don't know what the defaults are on Betaflight, right? But 4 on yaw is probably too high. It seems like that from what I'm seeing, that's higher than it should be. Try taking that down to like 2.5 and see if things clean up. Um, I mean, we're just seeing so much activity, even at low throttle, right? Here you're at no throttle at all. You're basically at zero throttle, more or less. And you're seeing so much activity here. So much activity. It shouldn't be like that. That's too much. Your P gain on yaw is too high. So if we go back to, the general troubleshooting philosophy here, all I'm doing here is I'm looking for the one thing that seems obviously wrong. And, there was something that I could have tried to nitpick on the pitch and roll axis, but then I got to the yaw axis and like there's one thing that's just clearly not right. Well, that's the first thing we're going to fix, and we're going to see if that fixes the problem. So don't nitpick the fine points until you fix the glaring problems. Um, something motes and beams, something. If we just take a look at the gyros here and zoom out, we should see this manifest pretty obviously. Yeah, the yaw axis is pretty noisy, and especially when we go to high throttle. You see how the yaw axis just becomes crazy noisy when we go to high throttle, whereas the roll axis, this is a really great example of what I was talking about in an earlier video about the difference between sort of tuning related problems and noise here. This vibration on the yaw axis is getting to the point where it almost looks thick like noise. It's almost starting to look like noise. It's so high frequency. Whereas if we look here at the roll axis, it's a thin line that's going up and down, right? That's a tuning issue, not a vibration or noise issue. Whereas this yaw axis that's starting to look like a thick line, well, we know that this is actually a tuning issue, so it's not like it's a hard line, right? But this is actually looks almost more like noise than like tuning issue. It's getting to be so high frequency. It's one thick fat line instead of a thin line going up and down. So anyway, that's the number one thing you should do, I think, is reduce your yaw P gain and see how it flies. That's my best guess as to what's causing it. By the way, I did say at the beginning of this video that this doesn't look like P gain, excess P gain. And I mean, it didn't. It doesn't. So, we don't live in a perfect world. Not everything is how it seems, and that's why Blackbox is such a great tool. Yeah, that's the message I'm going to leave you with. Uh, that's it. Thanks for your submission, and happy flying.